I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Good evening. Thailand. Thailand is a state in Asia that has enjoyed success these last decades since the Second War, since the end of the Japanese Empire, the French Empire, the British Empire, the Dutch Empire. But in these early years of the 21st century, it is non-transparent to me, and I need help on this. Gordon, a very good evening to you. There's been trouble in Thailand. There was an election within these last days. That makes this a democracy, Gordon. Is it a successful democracy? Is there an opinion in Asia that Thailand is the direction we want to go?
John, I actually don't think people believe that because there have been so many coups and attempted coups, and now you have this election where a lot of the people in the country actually blocked access to the ballot box. This is a very bad story because it shows that they cannot conduct a simple election.
Kelley Currie, senior fellow with the Project 2049 Institute, joins. Kelley, the 45.8 or 48% of the electorate voted. That compares very well with the United States, by the way, where we just clear 50%. But in any event, the last election was 75%. Does this election represent a retreat, a failure for Thailand? Good evening to you.
Good evening. Well, this election is part of an ongoing political crisis that has been taking place over the past decade, more or less, since Thaksin Shinawatra first sprung onto the political scene with his populist approach to governance that was largely met with just horror by the Bangkok elites who were used to managing the politics of Thailand. And it's been a struggle ever since then to deal with this change in the political structure of Thailand and this effort by the people in the north and the lower stations of society to have their voices heard by an elite that has traditionally not really listened to them.
Gordon?
Kelley, I get the sense that there are really no good guys in this contest.
Right.
You have Thaksin and his sister, who is now prime minister. They're not necessarily nice people. I mean, they're pretty corrupt and unsavory from all we can tell. And yet we also have the people in the streets who are protesting against the Shinawatras, but they seem to be pretty bad themselves in terms of blocking access to the ballot box, using violence, trying to shut down the government. I mean, is there anybody in this whole drama who comes out good? I mean, it just doesn't seem that way, does it?
No, nobody comes out of this looking good or on the side of democracy. The Shinawatras, particularly Thaksin, I mean, Yingluck has been thrust into this role because pretty much everybody else in her family is under indictment and is not allowed to be in Thailand right now. And she's now dealing with a situation where she and approximately 300 members of her political party, which is really Thaksin's political machine, are facing indictment in the legal system for corruption related to this disastrous rice scheme that they concocted to, again, appeal to their populist base of rice farmers in the north of Thailand. And it's been an absolute disaster for the Thai economy. More than anything, this rice crisis has damaged her credibility and her image, but it's not enough to undo the populist kind of support for the political movement that she represents and that her brother represents. But the Democrats have not comported themselves very well either. They've asked the military to intervene, and they've used the judicial system to mount basically what amounts to a judicial coup to remove the government, and they're also using these violent tactics to prevent the election and to thwart electoral democracy. So yes, you don't have good guys here, and the palace, which has traditionally served this mediating role when these kinds of political crises come up from time to time, is right now completely impotent and at best, and at worst is part of the problem.
There's a cartoonish flavor to this. I want to see if I get it straight, Kelley. Mr. Big, Thaksin, is in exile, a billionaire, accused of misbehavior, epic misbehavior. The military drove him out many years ago, 2006.
Right.
His relatives have access to his money, and he chooses one of his relatives, Yingluck, this is the suspicion, to run as his puppet, surrogate, and to place the government at his beck and call because he wants to come back. He wants amnesty. He wants them to forgive him. Now, what does Thaksin represent to the Thai people that they reject him? This is big manism. We see it so commonly in Asia. Heck, China's run by this. So what's wrong with him?
Well, I think that he's still quite popular with a certain segment of the population. In fact, what you could genuinely say is a majority of the people, the poor and traditionally underrepresented people in the north, the farmers and the poor people who saw his political movement as appealing to them and their concerns, because he's a billionaire many times over himself, and he got to be that way starting out at, he was the chief of police, and then suddenly he's a telecoms billionaire. I mean, it's quite a shady story, and he's a bad guy. There's no question. He's not a small d Democrat in any sense of the word, but he is a populist. He's kind of a Huey Long type figure who appeals to people on populist through populist means. And the Bangkok-based elite, the people in the South, where the Democratic Party of Thailand has its support, see him as a usurper, as somebody who uses populism for his own personal gain, and who doesn't respect democratic values.
All right. That doesn't... Gordon, I'll appeal to you on this. This is the Chinese model, right? It's just that there's only one Thaksin. There's not a standing committee of him.
Well, it sounds like there's a standing committee because you have the prime minister who's his younger sister, and as Kelley points out, you got all these members of his family who are under indictment. So in a sense, it does look like a collective Shinawatra dynasty almost.
And is the military sitting it out, Kelley?
Right now they are, because they got really heavily criticized in 2006 for that coup.
Yeah, military coups are messy things in the headlines.
They don't want to be in this position. And you also now have a new phenomenon of divisions within the military. And basically Thai society is very deeply divided right now, and it mirrors in a way our own societal divide. It's how deep, in a way it's as deep and as fundamental about what the nature of the Thai state, what the nature of Thai society is going to be, who's going to decide the future and the politics of the country. It's as fundamental and deep as the current political kind of crisis in the United States.
I mentioned, Gordon, to Kelley that this struck me from the outside, because all I do is get to talk to experts about it, as a very strikingly similar to the situation we've seen in Bangladesh, where the election went forward, but it was boycotted by the opposition, and there's challenge to a young democracy. Do you see the parallels, Gordon?
Well, that certainly is their parallel. And I think the problem is that in both societies, they're divided. And when you have these divided societies, you end up with groups in both camps that want to use extreme measures. And then that's exactly what's happened in Thailand right now. And that is a concern, because normally you'd have the king would step in and eventually would bring parties back to the middle. But he can't do that right now because he's sick, and his son, who's his successor, is reviled from what I understand. So this is not a good story where the monarchy is not able to play that stabilizing role that has been so important in the past.
The economy, is it struggling now, Kelley, or is that in the future?
Yeah, it is starting to. I mean, it was struggling already because of the collapse of this rice scheme that the Yingluck government put in place. And it did, when you do the kind of things that they did, where you subsidize rice production, and of course it led to overproduction, and then the state ran out of money basically to pay all the subsidies to the farmers who had overproduced rice. And now you have the Chinese canceling a huge, very important rice contract and seemingly putting their thumb on one side of the scales here, or at least pulling back a little bit from previous kind of, tacit support for the Yingluck and the Thaksin governments. So you have that aspect going on as well. And I'll say this also about the monarchy. It's very dangerous in a way to talk about the monarchy in Thailand, because they have very tough lèse-majesté laws that, they crack down on people for criticizing the monarchy. But the situation with the monarchy is that it has intervened over the years, but that's only really served to retard the development of Thailand's democracy and to keep it from kind of developing its own mediating institutions to deal with these kinds of political crises. And now that's gone.
Kelley Currie, Senior Fellow with the Project 2049 Institute, Gordon Chang of Forbes.com. I'm John Batchelor.